The betrayal did not start with shouting or anger. It started quietly, which made it more dangerous. One afternoon, I found out there had been a meeting about our family business, a serious meeting. Papers were discussed, decisions were made, but my parents and I were not invited. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Family does not hide meetings from family, or so I believed. Later that day, my uncle came by the office. He smiled like always. He asked about my parents. He joked about old memories. Everything looked normal on the surface, but when I looked into his eyes, he avoided mine. That small detail stayed with me. People who are honest do not avoid eye contact. People with secrets do. That evening, I asked casually about the meeting. My uncle waved it off. He said it was nothing important, just routine paperwork. His voice was calm, but something felt wrong. My chest felt tight, like my body knew the truth before my mind did. That was the moment I realized something had changed. Not loudly, not clearly, but enough to make me uneasy. That was the first lie, and it was only the beginning. Our family business was never big. We did not have fancy offices or expensive cars. What we had was honesty. My parents built everything from the ground up. They worked long hours, skipped vacations, and reinvested every dollar. I watched them sacrifice comfort so the business could survive. From the beginning, they believed family came first. Contracts were important, but trust mattered more. When relatives joined the business, paperwork was simple. Handshakes meant more than signatures. We believed blood would protect us better than lawyers ever could. I grew up hearing the same words again and again. Family will never betray you. Those words shaped how we lived and how we worked. We shared access, we shared responsibilities, we shared profits, and we shared trust without question. Looking back, I understand how naive that was. At the time, it felt right. It felt human. We were proud that we could run a business without suspicion. But trust, when placed in the wrong hands, becomes a weapon. We did not know it then, but every time we chose family over caution, we were giving them an advantage. That trust would not just hurt us, it would cost us everything we had built. I was the one who noticed the numbers first. I had always been good with details. One quiet evening, after everyone left, I stayed behind to review the accounts. At first, nothing looked strange. Then I looked again. Something was off. Small amounts were missing, not enough to cause panic, but enough to raise questions. I checked previous months. The pattern repeated. Money was disappearing slowly, carefully, like someone who did not want to be noticed. My heart started racing. I wanted to believe there was an explanation, a mistake, a delay, anything but theft. The next day, I asked about it during a casual conversation. I did not accuse anyone. I simply asked. My uncle laughed. He told me I was young and overthinking. He said business numbers always move around. Others joined in, smiling, nodding, dismissing my concern. Their reaction bothered me more than the missing money. Honest people explain. They do not mock. They do not turn questions into jokes. That night, I checked again. The numbers did not change. The truth was sitting there, silent and undeniable. Someone inside our own family was stealing from us, and they thought we were too blind to notice. After that, their attitude changed, not openly, but subtly. They spoke to us differently, with less respect, with quiet confidence like they already owned everything. I heard whispers when they thought we were not listening. They called us soft, too emotional, too trusting, too weak to fight back. They believed silence meant fear. They believed our calm meant surrender. Every time my parents chose peace over confrontation, they mistook it for helplessness. They did not understand that restraint is not the same as weakness. I watched my father stay quiet, even when insulted. I saw my mother force a smile when treated unfairly. To outsiders, it looked like defeat, but to me, it looked like endurance. Still, I could see how deeply it hurt them. The worst part was knowing they underestimated us. They thought we did not understand what was happening. They thought we lacked the courage or intelligence to respond. Their confidence grew because they believed we were already beaten. That label, weak, became their biggest mistake. Because when people stop seeing you as a threat, they become careless, and carelessness leaves evidence. We were not afraid. We were watching, and we were learning. The final proof came from a lawyer, a stranger who looked uncomfortable delivering bad news. He laid documents on the table, one by one. According to those papers, we had agreed to major changes in the business structure. Ownership percentages shifted, control transferred. On paper, the business no longer belonged to us. My hands shook as I read the signatures. They looked like ours, but they were not. Someone had forged them carefully, confidently, believing we would never challenge it. My parents were silent. Shock does that to people. It steals your voice. The lawyer explained everything calmly, like this kind of betrayal was normal. Legally, we had been trapped. The system favored paperwork, not truth, and the paperwork was against us. That night, I watched my parents sit in silence, years of work erased by ink and lies. That moment burned into me. Not anger, not rage, resolve. They thought this was the end. They believed the legal trap was perfect. But what they did not know was this: forged documents leave trails. Lies create patterns, and patience, when combined with truth, is stronger than any contract. That was the moment revenge stopped being emotional and became inevitable. After the legal trap closed around us, my parents changed in ways I had never seen before. My father, once strong and talkative, grew quiet. He would sit at the table for long periods, staring at nothing. When people spoke to him, he answered with short words, if at all. The man who built our business with his hands now looked unsure of his own place in the world. My mother tried to stay strong during the day. She cooked, cleaned, and smiled when neighbors visited. But at night, I could hear her crying through the walls. She thought I was asleep. She thought I did not hear. But I heard every tear she tried to hide. That sound stayed with me. I felt helpless watching them break slowly. There was no single moment of collapse, just a quiet, steady loss of hope. They blamed themselves for trusting family too much. They questioned every decision they had made. That pain became part of me. It settled deep in my chest and refused to leave. In that moment, I promised myself something. I would not let their sacrifice end in silence. I would carry this pain forward and turn it into something else, something stronger. Everyone expected us to react loudly. They thought we would shout, argue, and rush into court without a plan. Some even waited for us to beg. They believed desperation would break us completely. But we did none of that. We stayed quiet. Silence became our shield. We stopped asking obvious questions. We stopped reacting to their insults. On the surface, it looked like we had accepted defeat. They grew comfortable. They believed the fight was over. But silence gave us space to think. It gave us time to observe. Every careless word they spoke, every confident mistake they made, we noticed. While they celebrated their win, we studied their behavior. Staying quiet was not easy. Every day I wanted to confront them. Every lie hurt. Every smile felt like an insult. But I understood something important. Emotional reactions would only help them. Calm patience would protect us. They mistook our silence for weakness. They did not realize we were listening more closely than ever. And when people believe you are powerless, they stop hiding the truth. That silence became our advantage, and it slowly shifted the balance back in our favor. I began searching for answers quietly, without drawing attention. I reached out to former employees first, people who had left suddenly, people who had been pushed out for asking the wrong questions. At first, they were hesitant. Trust had been broken before, but slowly they began to talk. They told me about strange instructions, orders to move money, requests to delete emails, meetings that happened behind closed doors. Every conversation revealed another layer of deception. The picture became clearer with each story. Then I started digging through old files, archived emails, backup folders no one remembered, messages that were never meant to be seen again, lies written casually like routine tasks, plans discussed openly, assuming no one would ever look back. The deeper I went, the heavier the truth became. This was not a sudden betrayal. It was planned, slow, intentional. They had been preparing for years, using our trust against us. I saved everything. I copied files. I documented timelines. I did not confront anyone. I did not reveal what I knew. Knowledge became my power. And with every lie uncovered, my resolve grew stronger. This was no longer about anger. It was about justice. Once we understood the full picture, we made a decision as a family. Revenge would not be emotional. It would not be rushed. It would not be illegal. We would not become what they expected us to be. We chose the long game. That meant patience. It meant enduring unfair treatment while preparing quietly. It meant learning laws we never thought we would need. We studied contracts. We spoke to advisors without revealing too much. Every step was careful. The goal was not destruction, it was exposure. Truth has weight, especially when supported by evidence. We wanted everything to stand up in court, under scrutiny without doubt. Some days were harder than others. Waiting tested our strength. But we reminded ourselves why we were doing this. Not for revenge alone, but for dignity, for closure, for my parents' peace. They continued to underestimate us. They spent money freely. They grew careless. Confidence made them sloppy. That was exactly what we needed. The long game requires belief. Belief that truth will surface. Belief that patience will pay off. We held on to that belief tightly, because when the time came, we wanted our move to be final. The turning point came when someone unexpected reached out. A former accountant. He had been fired months earlier, officially for performance issues. Unofficially, it was because he asked too many questions. He contacted me quietly, afraid but determined. He told me he had kept copies of financial records, not out of revenge, but out of fear. He knew something was wrong and wanted protection. Those files were more than numbers. They were proof. He showed me transactions that had been hidden, accounts that were never reported. Money moved in patterns that could not be explained away. Everything matched what I had already found. For the first time, I felt something shift inside me. Hope. We were no longer alone. We had allies who cared about truth more than comfort. People who had been hurt by the same lies. We secured the evidence properly. We backed it up. We protected the accountant's identity. This was not about rushing forward. It was about building something solid. They thought no one was watching. They were wrong. The shadows were full of witnesses, and soon the truth would step into the light. Proof changes everything. Suspicion hurts, but proof gives you control. By the time we finished gathering evidence, there was no doubt left. Bank records showed money moving in careful patterns. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. Emails revealed instructions they never expected anyone to read again. Every message was casual, confident, and dishonest. Then there were the audio recordings. Conversations where they joked about how easy it was. How my parents would never fight back. Hearing their voices say those things felt worse than any document, but it also removed all hesitation. Nothing had truly been erased. They believed deleting files meant deleting truth. They were wrong. Digital trails survive arrogance. Lies leave fingerprints. I organized everything carefully. Dates, times, names, no emotion, just facts. We created backups in multiple places. We knew evidence only matters if it survives pressure. For the first time since the betrayal began, I felt steady, not angry, focused. We were no longer guessing, we were holding the truth in our hands. And once truth is documented, it becomes patient. It waits. It does not rush. It simply prepares for the right moment to be seen. While they enjoyed the business they stole, we focused on rebuilding ourselves. We had lost money, status, and stability, but we had not lost our ability to learn. My parents found new work, even though it hurt their pride. They started again from nothing, quietly and with dignity. I pushed myself harder than ever. I learned skills I never thought I would need: finance, contracts, systems. I studied how businesses really fail and how they survive. Every lesson became armor. We did not talk much about revenge during this time. Instead, we focused on growth. Strength does not come from rage. It comes from preparation. Each new skill gave us confidence they could not see. They thought we were struggling, and we were. But struggle builds muscle. Pain teaches discipline. Slowly, we became different people, sharper, calmer, less trusting, but more aware. We were no longer the family they underestimated. We were becoming something stronger. Rebuilding was not glamorous, it was exhausting, but it reminded us of who we were before the betrayal. Hard workers, survivors, and now students of a system that once crushed us. Success made them careless. Once they believed they had won, their behavior changed. They stopped hiding. They took more money. They made bigger moves. Greed always wants more. They bragged openly to friends and partners about deals, about power, about how smart they were. I heard stories from people who thought we no longer mattered. They assumed nothing would ever come back to us. Their spending grew louder. Expensive trips, new cars, public celebrations. They believed wealth made them untouchable. What they did not understand was this: greed creates patterns. Patterns create evidence. Every extra dollar stolen increased their exposure. They began cutting corners, ignoring procedures, signing things without caution. Confidence replaced caution. That is always the beginning of the end. We watched everything, quietly, carefully. Every careless move made our case stronger. Their greed did not just blind them, it fed us. It gave us more proof, more leverage, and more time. They thought they were rising higher. In reality, they were digging deeper. The first real crack appeared when an anonymous report was filed. It was short, factual, calm. It raised questions without accusations, enough to trigger attention, not panic. An audit followed, small at first, routine, they said, nothing serious. When they heard about it, they laughed. They joked about how audits were just paperwork games. They believed they had covered their tracks. We smiled quietly. That audit did not expose everything, but it did something important. It planted doubt. Investigators asked questions. They requested documents. They looked closer than before. For the first time, they felt watched. And people who feel watched start making mistakes. Their tone changed. Their confidence cracked just enough to show fear underneath. Meetings became tense. Decisions slowed. They told themselves it would pass. They told each other they were safe. But we knew better. Once scrutiny begins, it rarely stops at one question. That small audit was not the end. It was the beginning of pressure. And pressure reveals the truth. After the audit, pressure grew steadily. Investigations expanded. Partners started asking questions they had never asked before. Trust, once solid, began to erode around them. I could see it in their faces. The confidence they once carried so easily was gone. Conversations became defensive. Smiles felt forced. Every call felt urgent. Business partners wanted clarity. Banks wanted explanations. Lawyers wanted documents. And every request pulled another thread. They tried to hold things together, but lies require constant maintenance. Truth does not. The pressure affected everything. Decisions were delayed. Deals fell apart. People distanced themselves quietly, not wanting to be connected when things collapsed. We remained silent. We did not celebrate. We did not interfere. We let the system work. Watching pressure close in was satisfying, but also sobering. This was not chaos. It was consequence. Trust, once broken, never fully returns. And now they were experiencing what we had felt months earlier: uncertainty, fear, exposure. The balance had shifted, and it was only going to tip further. This time, we filed first. Not with anger, not with desperation, but with facts. Every document was organized, every claim supported, every timeline verified. When the court papers were submitted, my hands were steady. That surprised me. Months earlier, I could barely think clearly. Now everything felt precise. We did not rush. We waited until the evidence was complete. Bank records matched emails, audio recordings supported timelines. Nothing relied on emotion. Everything relied on proof. Filing first mattered. It shifted control. Instead of defending ourselves, we were making the claims. They were forced to respond, to explain, to scramble. When they received the papers, their reaction was immediate. Panic hid behind forced confidence. They pretended it was nothing, but their actions said otherwise. Emergency meetings, late-night calls, legal consultations. I felt no joy watching that, only calm. This was not revenge driven by rage. It was accountability unfolding naturally. For the first time since the betrayal began, I felt balance return. The system that once trapped us was now being used correctly. And this time, the truth was on our side. Court is not dramatic like movies. It is slow, methodical, and unforgiving. When the hearings began, I watched closely. Not at the lawyers, but at them. Their confidence faded with every document presented. Emails appeared on screens, signatures were compared, money trails were traced clearly and publicly. There was no room for interpretation. The facts spoke louder than any defense. I saw faces turn pale, hands shake, eyes avoid contact. The same people who once smiled while lying now struggled to sit still. Their stories changed. Their explanations contradicted each other. Truth does not rush. It unfolds piece by piece, and each piece landed heavily. The judge asked questions they could not answer cleanly. Silence filled the room in moments where lies once lived. I felt something unexpected: relief. Not because they were suffering, but because the truth was finally visible. Out in the open. No more whispers, no more hidden meetings. For so long we carried this alone. Now the weight had shifted. The burden was no longer ours. It belonged to those who created the lie. The fall was not loud, it was systematic. Assets were frozen first, bank accounts locked, access removed. Suddenly, the power they enjoyed vanished. I heard about it through others. Properties flagged, spending restricted, legal notices delivered. The same people who once controlled everything now needed permission to move a dollar. Friends disappeared quickly. Phone calls stopped, invitations ended. Support fades fast when consequences arrive. Their confidence collapsed under pressure. Public smiles turned into closed doors. Private panic replaced public pride. Watching it happen felt surreal, not because it was unexpected, but because it was deserved. Actions finally met consequences. We did not interfere. We did not add fuel. We let the system continue its work. I realized something important during this time. Revenge is not about watching someone fall. It is about watching balance return. They had taken stability from us. Now instability belonged to them. And for the first time, they understood what it felt like to lose control. News spreads quietly at first, then all at once. Local reports surfaced. Business circles started talking. The respected family name they once protected became associated with fraud and betrayal. People who once praised them went silent. Others distanced themselves publicly. Reputation, once damaged, is hard to repair. I read articles without emotion. I listened to conversations without satisfaction. Exposure was not our goal. It was the natural result of truth. The story became a warning about trust, about greed, about thinking power makes you untouchable. My parents felt something shift, not happiness, closure. Their pain was finally acknowledged, not dismissed. Public exposure does not destroy people. Their actions do. The truth simply reveals what was already there. Avoided public places. They avoided conversations. The world they built on lies could no longer protect them. We remained quiet, dignified, uninterested in commentary. Silence had carried us this far. And it continued to speak louder than any statement. They came to us quietly, one by one. No confidence, no pride, just desperation. Apologies filled with fear instead of regret. They asked for forgiveness, they offered deals, they promised change. Months earlier, those words might have mattered. Now they sounded empty. I listened without interrupting, not to punish them, but to understand how far they had fallen. They spoke about family, about mistakes, about second chances, but forgiveness cannot replace accountability, and regret does not erase harm. We said nothing. Silence was our answer, not out of cruelty, out of clarity. Some doors closed permanently, not because of anger, but because trust does not grow back once it is burned. When they left, I felt no triumph, only peace. They thought my family was weak. They were wrong. We were patient, and patience outlasted them. The ruling came on a quiet morning. No dramatic music, no celebration, just words spoken clearly in a courtroom. The judge ruled in our favor. Ownership was restored. Damages were awarded. The forged documents were officially declared fraudulent. Every lie was named for what it was. I felt my chest loosen as the decision was read. Not because we won money or property, but because truth had been recognized. The system that once failed us finally worked the way it should. The business was returned to us legally and completely. Accounts were corrected. Control was restored. The people who betrayed us faced real consequences, not rumors or whispers, but legal judgment. My parents sat quietly beside me. No tears, no smiles, just deep breaths. Justice does not always feel loud. Sometimes it feels like release. Walking out of the courthouse, I realized something important. Justice is not revenge. It is balance. It is correction. It is the truth, standing without fear. We did not cheer. We did not speak to the press. We simply walked forward. And for the first time in a long while, the weight of injustice was no longer on our backs. Peace arrived slowly. It did not come with fireworks or celebrations. It showed up in small moments. My father slept through the night again. My mother laughed at simple jokes. Those changes mattered more than any financial victory. For months, their lives had been filled with tension. Worry had lived in their faces. Fear had followed them into every quiet moment. Now that fear began to fade. We talked about ordinary things again. Meals felt lighter. Conversations were not heavy with uncertainty. Home felt safe. I watched my parents regain parts of themselves they had lost. Confidence returned. Smiles became natural instead of forced. They stood straighter. They spoke with ease. Money did not heal them. Peace did. That is when I understood the real cost of betrayal. It steals rest, it steals joy, it steals trust in the world. Getting those things back mattered more than winning a case. Revenge may satisfy anger, but peace heals damage. And in those quiet nights, hearing my parents sleep peacefully again, I knew we had already won long before the final chapter closed. Rebuilding the business felt different this time. We were wiser, more careful, stronger in ways that could not be measured by profit. We changed how things were done. Every role was clearly defined. Every agreement was written. Every decision was documented. Trust was still important, but boundaries mattered more. We did not rush growth. We focused on stability, on ethics, on building something that could not be stolen quietly again. I took on more responsibility, not out of fear, but out of commitment. This business was no longer just work. It was proof of survival. We chose partners carefully. We asked hard questions. We trusted slowly. Pain had taught us discipline. There was no bitterness in this new beginning, only clarity. The past did not control us anymore. It informed us. As the business slowly stabilized, I felt pride, not in success, but in resilience. We had been tested, broken, and challenged, and yet we stood. This was not a return to the old days. It was something better, something earned. Looking back now, I understand how they misjudged us. They believed loud people are strong. They believed quiet people are weak. They believed silence meant surrender. They never understood patience. We did not rush because we were afraid. We waited because we were preparing. We observed. We learned. We chose the right moment. Strength does not always shout. Sometimes it listens. I think about how easily things could have gone differently. One emotional reaction could have destroyed everything. One careless move could have ruined our case. Silence protected us when words would have betrayed us. They underestimated restraint, they underestimated time, and they underestimated truth. Patience gave us clarity. It gave us control. It allowed us to act with precision instead of rage. When I look back, I do not feel regret. I feel understanding. Weakness was never our story. Endurance was. And endurance, when guided by truth, always lasts longer than deception. We never raised our voices. We never fought dirty. We never became what they expected us to be. We stayed calm when provoked, silent when mocked, focused when tested. They thought my family was weak. That was the mistake. Weak people react. Strong people prepare. This story is not about revenge. It is about restraint. It is about trusting truth over anger. It is about believing that justice may be slow, but it is not blind. If there's one lesson I carry forward, it is this: silence is not surrender. Patience is not fear. And kindness does not mean you lack strength. When people mistake your calm for weakness, let them. Time will correct them. We did not win by destroying anyone. We won by standing still while lies collapsed on their own. And when the noise faded, when the truth stood alone, one thing was clear. They thought my family was weak. And that belief cost them everything.